This is the study guide for chapter 10, exam number 4. And in this chapter, we're going to talk about what happened at el consultorio, at the doctor's office. And we have the image of a doctor or a nurse, una doctora o una enfermera, with a patient, con una paciente. See? So the first exercise we'll find in this exam will be an exercise of vocabulary, and you will have to review the sections of contextos in these pages here, and then at the end of the chapter, you have a summary of all the vocabulary. So in contextos, this is all the vocabulary you're going to learn, which is a really nice chapter for future nurses. There's a little more over here, and it's a good idea to review the exercise that come in these contextos. For example, I like this completar. It says, completa las oraciones con una palabra de la misma familia. So the same family. It should sound very similar to the word they underline. So, ¿cómo oyes cuando oyes algo? Usas el oído de oír. Cuando te enfermas, te sientes enfermo. Y vas al consultorio para ver a la enfermera. Does it make sense? So this is a good model to start practicing for that. There's also some more exercises. There are more exercises in the next page. And let's go to the next exercise here. So the next exercise you will find in the test will be an audio exercise. Remember that for that is recommended to work on the audios that come in Canvas together with contextos. These two, for example, are audio exercises. You have more on the super site, and you have escuchar, which is a section of the textbook that is only focusing on audio exercises. You see, you have all these in here. You have the comprehension questions. That's how the exam will be, something similar to that. Back to the study guide. The grammar exercise in this chapter are quite important because it's talking in this chapter you're gonna study the uses of the preterite and imperfect, and those will be work on in this exam number 4, but also in your composition. And future classes of Spanish will review these again and again. So this is an important section of this class. If we go to the book to review those sections, we start with 10.1. In previous chapters, you have studied the use of the preterite, and the preterite is a tense of the past that we use to talk about actions that happen in the specific times in the past, usually with a beginning and an end. Now, the imperfect is a different type of tense of the past. The imperfect is a tense that we usually use to talk about repeated or habitual actions in the past, things that we used to do. That's how we would do it in English, with used to. Now, the conjugation is a little different in the AR verbs and the ER-IR verbs. You see that is cantaba for ar verbs, but bebía for and ir verbs. The good thing is that they're not stem-changing verbs, and they're only a few little things in terms of irregular verbs. There's only 3 irregular verbs: ir, ser, y ver. So that's a plus. When do we use it? Let me take this down. Describe actions that are seen as the speaker as incomplete or continuing. So that is different than the preterite, because the preterite was used to talk about something, an action that was completed. And like I was telling you, repeated actions, habitual actions in the past. These expressions are often used with the imperfect because they express habitual or repeated actions. De niño, todos los días, mientras, siempre. All those are actions that are repeated. And this is a summary of the uses. So repeated actions, actions that were in progress. Physical characteristics are usually described with imperfect. Mental or emotional states are explained with imperfect. The time is still with imperfect, and age is also expressed with imperfect. Some exercises to work on, to practice, also in the supersite. And the next point of grammar is, of course, once you have seen the preterite and the imperfect, is the combination of both. When do we use one, or when do you use the other? So I really like these charts in here because it puts the two of them face to face to explain in what cases you use one or the other. So number one, the preterite for actions that are completed at the eyes of the speaker, but the imperfect for actions that are ongoing, everything in the past, okay? And it doesn't have a clear beginning or an end. Number two, express the beginning or an end of a past action, of course. For that, we use the preterite. And number two, in the imperfect, actions that are habituales o repetidas. Another of the situations that can happen is the stories that are told in the past. When we have stories that are told in the past, well, actually, I'm thinking that maybe I should explain that a little later. Let me finish with this chart. 3. Narrate the series of past actions, or events. Actions that happen one after the other. Okay, so la doctora me miró, me hizo preguntas y escribió la receta, one after the other. And number 3 here, describe physical and emotional states of characteristics. Ella quería descansar, se sentía mal y tenía dolor. And I'll tell you about the narration in the past a little bit later. So in here, we start talking about what I was going to explain you a few minutes ago, going ahead of myself, because I don't know why I'm in such a rush. In here, the book explains when these two tenses happen together, how do they interact. So usually they work together when they're talking about an action that was happening when another one interrupted. The one that was happening will happen in imperfect, but the one that interrupts will happen in the preterite. Por ejemplo, miraba la tele cuando sonó el teléfono. So what is happening? I was watching TV, imperfect. Sonó el teléfono, that's the action that interrupts. And for that, I will use a preterite. So that's the combination of the two. And then the second combination of the two is in this paragraph here, is when we tell a story, stories in the past, when we are doing a narrative, a narration of a story in the past. When we do that, what we do is we use the imperfect to describe the background information, to kind of set the stage, talk about time, weather, location, and then we'll use the preterite to talk about the specific events of the story, what occurred, to actually move the story. And I like to use in my classes the story of Little Red Riding Hood to explain the difference of verbs. For example, you would say, there was a girl who was a really good girl. She was living with her mom. She used to wear a red riding hood. Blah, 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 blah. You describe the background using the imperfect. Había una niña. La niña era buena. La niña vivía con su mamá. La niña tenía una capa roja. La niña era amiga de los animales. All that, since it's the setting of the background, we will use it, or we will describe it in imperfect. But then when we actually talk about what happened, we how the action starts moving, we're going to use the preterite. One day her grandma got sick, preterite. Her grandma called the mom, preterite. The grandma asked for food, preterite. Un día la abuelita se enfermó. La abuelita llamó a la mamá y pidió comida. All those will go in in preterite. So that's how it works in the narration. And I know I was going ahead of myself, but I hope it's clear. If not, you can talk to me, because it's hard, this is a hard combination of tenses that in English doesn't really happen the same way as in Spanish. It's the aspect of tenses. I like this exercise because it makes you decide which one you need to use. So review this exercise. It's a good one. Um, this is a good exercise too, and there's a few good ones too in the in the super site. You'll have something similar to these, I would think, in the exam. More constructions with se. This is the accidental se. This is a very specific construction that happens in Spanish. When something has happened in which we are responsible of an accident, in Spanish we do it kind of indirectly. You don't say I lost my keys, but my keys got lost to me. You kind of avoid the responsibility. And there's a very specific structure to indicate that. We use a se, an indirect object pronoun, and if you don't know those, please review them. You use the verb, and then you use the object that either fall or um, broke or got lost or whatever. Um, so these are accidental or unplanned events. It's actually an easy structure, but you need to study it well to make sure you understand how the this structure is built. So there's some verbs that are commonly, of course, verbs that are describing accidents, right, are commonly used with this structure. Caer, dañar, olvidar, perder, quedar, romper. That's what, and those are the verbs that usually work with this form, grammatical form. Exercises to practice the structures, and this is another one that I kind of like. In the test, let me see if I can see, is there anything similar? In the test, you will have some sentences, and these sentences will have menus to drop down in which you will have to choose what are the verbs or the pronouns that you need to use. Okay, so it will be kind of a multiple choice exercise. So review these because it will be in the exam. And the last structure of this chapter are the adverbs. Remember, adverbs are grammatical forms that modify adjectives or verbs. And these are some common ones that you probably feel familiar with. Aquí, ayer, bien, hoy, mal, muy, nunca, siempre, temprano. You have probably seen mente a million times too. Mente is a particle we put at the end of a feminine adjective to change it into an adverb. For example, the word verdadera, true, but if we add mente, we are forming the adverb truly, kind of like in English, right? You have true, but then if you add ly, you can make it into an adverb, truly. What else? Adverbial expressions. These are gonna be in the exam, so please review these adverbial expressions. They will be very useful to you too to practice for the composition, because compositions that have adverbial expressions usually are talking about a student that knows how to organize information and how to be more specific with the information they're given. So that's something to do. This is a very good exercise to practice. So use it to practice. This is a good one too. And then this is the recapitulación, in which you do kind of like a little revision. And if we go back to the let's go back to the questions here. At the end, like always, you would have the questions on the videos and text of the chapter, And please review the sections in the book that are, let me see, fotonovela is the first one. Qué dolor. In this fotonovela, Jimenez talking about the time she gets sick actually, and she has to go to the doctor. And then she talks about when she broke her arm. She broke her arm um, twice, okay? And she's talking to her friend about how she broke her arm too. I mean, it's actually the friend, I think, the one who broke her arm twice. It says it in here. Me caí y me rompí el brazo. I'm sorry, I got confused for a moment. So remember, Elena, Jimena's friend, broke her arm twice. Fotonovela. What else? Cultura. Cultura talks about health and about medicinal plants, curanderos, chamanes, traditional ways to deal with health. Lectura is a review of a book by Carla Baron. She's writing about health and traveling in this book. So it's a review of a book. En pantalla, it's an advertisement, a commercial of an association against Parkinson, and they become wolves. So it's a pretty tender one. You would like to see it, so please. Well, you have to see it. You have to watch it. And then Flash Cultura talks about health. This reporter has to go to the hospital, a la guardia, and she's in Argentina. She tell us a little bit about um, how the health system is in Argentina. And then Panorama does a little summary, a general summary on Costa Rica, and tells us very interesting things like um, what's the percentage of the play of the country that is occupied by forest or parks, national parks. And look, it says in here is a 12% of the territory. So that's a little summary of the study guide. Like always, you can talk to me, send me an email. We can set a conference if you want to or need to prepare for these tests, and I'll be happy to help you. You can also use the tutoring service in Canvas. So, buena suerte y hasta la próxima semana.